Hello and welcome everyone for this new webinar on Dynamics 365. Today we're going to speak about PowerApps. I know that you heard this name for I think more than a year and a half now, and we're thinking it's a good time to go deeper on it because Microsoft recently released new functionality. And for this webinar, I have with me today Nelson Lopez from Dynamics. He's the Canadian National Partner Technology Strategist for CRM. And I'm your host, Cyril Courret, Product Manager at ShareWeb for Dynamics 365. A few housekeeping items before we start. This webinar is being recorded. We'll send you the link in the next 48 hours. There is a box for asking questions, so please send every question you have. We'll do our best to answer today, or we'll follow up on that. Also, you can already download the slides of the presentation. So if you go in GoToWebinar, it's called Handouts, and from there you can get the presentation. So that being said, let's start with the agenda for today. So we're going to see what your clients can do with PowerApps and what it means and what really the power of these new apps. It's a great name, yeah. So all the details about common data service. So that means how to reuse data from Dynamics using that with PowerApps, and also the difference of application that you can build. So Canvas application or model driven, what it means for you, what is the difference, when to use it, what you should add to your portfolio. So really, what is the opportunity for a Dynamics partner? What is the opportunity for an MSP? Nelson is going to walk us through a demo, and we'll see also the resources that you have available for you. So before to start, because I've seen in the attendees that most of you are not ShareWeb's partners, so let's go quickly on with ShareWeb and how we can help you to be more successful in the cloud. So ShareWeb, we're in business for more than 20 years now, always focusing on cloud technology. We have now close to 7,000 partners, and we managed 55,000 organizations worldwide. We are now over 500 people working for us. Many of us are certified in Microsoft and other technology. We have different data centers in North America, a bunch of certification related to it. We are a Microsoft and direct cloud solution provider, means we can resell Microsoft cloud services to partners, but more than that, we enable our partner to be able to sell on that and be more successful. We got different awards and recognition, and also we're really proud of that. So big part of our business is providing support, and our NP score, that is the score that people use to give a grade to support, is over 78. That is a very high in the standard of the market. So what kind of offer we have at ShareWeb? Here you can see kind of an overview of our portfolio. So really strong on Office 365 and all the Microsoft technology that include Microsoft Azure, Dynamics 365, and Hosted Exchange, really, so the mailbox and services around that. We have our own cloud PBX services. We're doing some infrastructure as a service, backup, compliance. So really the vision here, ShareWeb, we want to be your one-stop shop for cloud services. And really means having all the solution that your customer need, but also enable you. So we can see on the next slide a bit more, because this webinar is about Dynamics, what we are doing more on Dynamics. So we are really two ways, like we want to enable MSPs, so standard partner, we want to enable you to be able to resell, but also we work a lot with Dynamics partner that they already have the skills, and how we can again help you to jump in the cloud, or we can do peer-to-peer and so on. So we do have some onboarding services really for small customer that they want to start. We provide different level of support. We help you with the sales, and an important part that we're doing is that we connect partner to each other. So let's say you are a traditional partner, you have an opportunity pretty advanced for Dynamics that our service will not match. We are really glad and proud to connect you with one of our Dynamics partner, and you can work together on those deals. On the next slide, we see an example. So this is our partner toolbox kind of content that we're going to provide to our customer and partner to be able to sell more. And on the other view, you give also one of a big part of our value. It's our provisioning portal. If you go on the next slide, it's really the portal that we built, and it's really for you to manage the instant provisioning of those services, manage the billing, be able to split services for a different customer. So really part of our product that we build to make our partner more successful in the cloud. So that being said, that is with ShareWeb, or we can help you. I don't want to spend more time on that. Read the subject today. It's PowerApps. So Nelson is going to present us some of the content, some of the concept, and after we'll jump on a live demo. Thank you, Nelson.
Okay. Thanks, Cyril. Good morning or afternoon, everybody. Let's go ahead and just jump into it and talk about. Let's start off by talking about the need for PowerApps and the new PowerApps. When we think about users of business software, everyday business software, they don't operate like this, like pilots in a cockpit that has very complex software and tools and systems. They actually work more like this. Traveling between different flights and checking your email or some update on your phone, or doing a critical checklist on a plane or something like this, where here we have somebody who works at an airport that's trying to help some passengers. And you think about in this picture here, I always kind of joke around a little bit that this person who's working at the airport, or maybe she's working for one of the airlines, is actually looking too relaxed and too happy. In reality, if you think about the situation in many airports, especially, like say, Monday morning, winter, maybe there's been a few flight delays, cancellations. There's probably 2 to 3 times more people at the airport that there normally is. You think about that person that that person who's trying to help some passengers at the airport. Maybe she works for the airline, maybe she works for the airport itself. And you think about them being bombarded with questions and trying to help passengers, trying to help customers. In that situation, when you think about the interface, the software, the application, which one of these user interfaces would you recommend? Would you recommend kind of the experience on the left, the tablet experience? Would you recommend the experience in the middle, or the experience in the far right? And you think about that person who has a very specific task-based function, and they would probably in that situation, in those really tense situations where they're trying to just get us 1 or 2 tasks completed, trying to help some customers, some passengers. The application on the far right would probably serve them better because it has less clutter on the screen. It's focused on just 1 or 2 or 3 tasks max. It has big buttons, very easy to read text. It's just, it was designed for that one specific purpose. Here's the problem, though. For those of you that have worked with Dynamics CRM and XRM, anything relationship management over the years, XRM, which has been around since 2010, you know this. You know that the application, the mobile application on the far right, that while technically that's always been possible to build on top of the XRM, Dynamics CRM, Dynamics Customer Engagement platform or framework, while it was always possible to build, it was always very difficult to do because it would be, you'd have to fire up Visual Studio, you'd have to write a lot of custom code. It was technically possible, but it was very difficult. So today, with the new PowerApps and the Common Data Service 2.0, which we're going to talk about, building that application on the far right to address this very niche group of business users that have one or two or three task-based functions, this has become significantly easier today. So for the longest time with Dynamics, Dynamics CRM customer engagement, there's been this kind of group of business users that's always been very hard to service, right? The ones, again, that have very task-based, functional mobile needs. But now with PowerApps and Common Data Service 2.0, we can now address it. So what do we recommend? PowerApps, of course, and it's in case you haven't heard about PowerApps, it's been around for a couple of years, and this spring 2018, there's a lot of new capability and functionality. That's why I kind of refer to it as the new PowerApps. But PowerApps, if you haven't heard about it, it is the rapid application development environment for Microsoft, the one, and it allows business-powered users to create very specific task-based applications, mobile applications on a smartphone or on a tablet. And, we have lots of stories of customers around the world that maybe they have some power users, some somewhat technical savvy users that are building really interesting and applications for the business that would normally require, frankly, a developer. And so a lot of it is you can now do through point and click configuration. So just very quickly, 5 benefits of PowerApps for you as, for those on the call that are familiar with Dynamics CRM, customer engagement, XRM, 5 benefits of PowerApps for you and your customers. And these are 5 things that before in the old world were not easy to develop on XRM, CRM without PowerApps. So the first one is that it's really easy to build applications, tablet-based applications, smartphone applications. And not only is it easy to build, but it's very easy to change it. And there's a saying that if PowerPoint and Excel got together and had a baby, it would be PowerApps. And that's kind of true, actually. You'll see it in the demo, but as you're building the screens of your applications, they kind of look like slides. And then between the screens, between the different components, you can add some smarts to it. You can add some functions, a little bit of code. In many cases, you don't need code at all, but that code kind of looks like Excel functions. And so, but it's not enough to just, have something that's quick and easy to build. You also need to be able to change it because business is constantly changing. And as you build the first iteration of your application, you want to get that feedback from the user at the airport and, the people that are on the tarmac, changing that or doing the checklist for that plane. You want to get that feedback to say, what's working for you, what's not working for you, because you want to be able to change things very, very quickly. And PowerApps allows you to easily build and change things much, much quicker than it used to be in the past. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that as you build out your application, it is pixel perfect. So you can make a button as big as you want it, as small as you want it. You can place it anywhere on the screen, as opposed to XRM, Dynamics CRM, mobile apps, where things are kind of predetermined for you on the screen. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. It really just depends on the user and the scenario. We're gonna talk about this a little bit further, a little bit later. But you have full control over the user experience as you build it. Whereas with XRM, it's really based on the declarative model that manages the visuals. The third thing is that the application that you build with PowerApps is cross-platform. So it's available on iOS and available for an Android and Windows and, of course, the web. And sharing, deploying apps is just incredibly easy, very, very easy. The fourth thing is that the applications that you build are enterprise ready. So we'll see this in the demo, but it includes telemetry to see how people are using your applications that you build, where they're using it. It looks at the performance of the app. Like, for example, as you go from screen to screen, on average, how long does it take users to move? These are things that, over and above everything I mentioned before, in the old world on XRM, it was hard enough just to build that custom user interface. But the fact that PowerApps provides all this stuff on top of it, like the telemetry and things like data loss prevention policy, which basically puts a restriction on, as you bring in data into the application, where it can come from and all that. And the fact that it's compliant with all of these standards, this is over and above what we could provide before. The fifth thing is that the beautiful thing is that PowerApps allows you to mash up or bring data from many different sources into one single application. So you can import data from other different sources. There are 160 plus connectors available in the marketplace for PowerApps that allows you to bring in data from different sources into one screen, one single screen. Now, PowerApps comes with something called the Common Data Service for apps. So there's a couple of big things that we're talking about today in the webinar. First of all, it's the new PowerApps and all of the capability that it provides in terms of building applications very quickly and all the things that we mentioned before, and the fact that it's integrated with Dynamics. The second big thing we're talking about here is the Common Data Service for apps. Okay, that comes with PowerApps. Now, what you're seeing on the screen right now is the business application platform from Microsoft, and you can see there in the middle, there's two big things there: PowerApps and Power BI. And within PowerApps, we have the Common Data Service for apps, or CDS for apps. We'll talk a little bit more about that in just a second. And then we have the Common Data Service for analytics, CDS for analytics. And so we have the two of them together. Now, you're probably wondering, why do we have two different versions of the Common Data Service? Because you're probably thinking back, a couple of years ago, there was really one. And the reason for it is, and you can kind of almost think of it as OLTP and OLAP, online transactional processing and online analytical processing. But CDS for apps really holds the data, the transactional data for your applications that you see up above, the customer engagement, CRM applications like sales and service and field services and professional services, automation and talent. And then CDS for analytics, the function there is twofold. Number one, it's the thing that takes that data from CDS for apps, and it produces some analytics. It produces analytics that you can then build dashboards and build insight that then appears within the apps themselves. The second function for CDS for analytics is that not only does it do the analysis and gives you that insight around the data, but it goes a step further and it provides intelligence. So machine learning, that analyzes the data and tries to provide the next best action and step. So CDS for analytics has those two things. A couple more things here before we move on. Within PowerApps, we have Microsoft Flow, which is that application, of course, that moves data from many different sources. Now, you're probably wondering, okay, that's interesting. We have in the graph, in the illustration here, we have customer engagement, CRM, and talent, and standalone apps built on CDS for apps, but there's no connector. So they're built directly on CDS for apps, which is kind of a database. And so what that essentially means is that it's there is it's kind of like XRM, right? And that there is no connector, and your applications are built directly on the apps. Whereas operations and finance, which used to be called Dynamics AX, it can still integrate with CDS for apps, but it does require a connector. Two more things very quickly. On top of CDS for apps and CDS for analytics, we have the common data model on the CDM down below. The common data model, it really doesn't hold any data. You can think of it as just a schema. And if you go to GitHub, it's actually published there as open source, the schema. It includes something like 115 entities. Many of the common ones that you know, like account and contact, and things like incident or case, opportunity and lead. A lot of these entities can be used across many different applications. So for example, operations and finance also has the concept of a contact. It also has the concept of an account or customer. And the CDM can also be extended. So let's move on here. So as a result of the CDS for apps and the fact that it's essentially kind of like the old XRM platform, but it goes a little bit further in that not only does it provide all of the capability of XRM, like the data modeling and all that, but it goes further in that it brings in data from many different sources, such as the 160 connectors I mentioned earlier. As a result of that platform goodness we get from XRM, we get something new called model-driven apps. Model-driven apps. Now, for those of you on the call today, if you've worked with Dynamics CRM or XRM in the past, the term model-driven apps, it might be new to you, but you already know what it is because it's basically essentially the XRM apps. So it's what you've been building for the last 8 years. An XRM app is basically a model-driven app. It's just a different name for it. And so the application, the way it looks, is based on the declarative model. So the data model that you put together, the relationships, the rules, the processes. So you can see it in the screenshot there at the bottom left-hand corner. So, but the thing that we really want to talk about today, that's probably new to a lot of people on the call, is a Canvas app. A Canvas app is the second different type. It's a new type of application, I guess, for that very task-based mobile user that we kicked off the presentation with. And it's that application, the way it looks, you have full control over it. It's pixel perfect. Now this table here this really kind of illustrates the difference between the two of them. And this table here, this slide here actually shows a lot because we've talked about PowerApps, we've talked about the common data service, and you're probably wondering, okay, well, I understand that there are these two different types of applications now based on the user requirements. When would I use one versus the other? So for model-driven app, that's really good for things that you kind of already know: opportunity management, case management, tracking a long-term business process, right? And then for Canvas apps, that's really good for the purpose-built specific task, and such as the ones that we cited earlier. And Canvas apps are typically for mobile worker scenarios like inspection. So we have a lot of examples of where people have created Canvas apps for inspections. It does give you full control over the visuals and the layout. common data services for apps. Also, it gives you access to 160, I think actually it's around 200 connectors now that allow you to mash up experiences. But here's the big thing. Given that PowerApps is part of the business applications, the Dynamics platform family now, the new PowerApps, and this is something that's new this spring, has access to a lot of new functionality that used to be or came from XRM. Things like business rules were not possible before. Business rules are now possible within PowerApps, calculated in roll-up fields, workflows, code plugins, and so forth. Now, both applications are designed in PowerApps.com, both the Canvas app and also the model-driven app. We're going to take a look at that in just 1 second. So let's switch over to the demo. When you log into the Microsoft Online Office 365 portal, when you go to portal.microsoftonline.com, you're going to be presented with your application. And so you can see here there's a number of different applications. There's Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Dynamics 365, and there's PowerApps. When I click on PowerApps, it's going to take me to the web.powerapps.com environment. And this is where you can start to build both the Canvas apps and the model-driven apps. So at the bottom left-hand corner there, you'll see the two different application types, Canvas apps and model-driven apps. Here you can see there's a few different recently built applications that my colleagues and I have built, greeter apps, right? Various greeter apps. And as you go, let's scroll a little bit further, you'll see a number of different templates that we can start from. So we can actually start from a blank template, or we can start building our application from the data. So bring the data in first and then change the look and feel of it. Here's a simple smartphone application for contacts, one for help desk, one for browsing organization structure. Here's a meeting capture one, out of office, leave request. And you'll notice that the templates have both a smartphone format and also a tablet format as well. Over on the left here, we have access to our data model. And so what we're doing here is we're reaching out to a common data service environment. We have a number of different environments here, common data service environment. And in the entity, what we have here is a list of some of those 115 entities I mentioned earlier. Some of these are going to be very familiar to you, like account and contact and currency and so forth. You can see the type of entity there, so standard or custom. So you can still go ahead and create custom entities if you want to, right? If we open up one of these entities like contact, for example, we'll see some of the things that we're familiar with, such as, the entity has a number of different fields. As you can see here, street address, phone number, telephone, and so forth. You can see the data type, right? You can see whether it's a standard entity or a custom entity. So you can go ahead and add different entities as well. So if we go ahead and select one of these, it'll do a flyout from the right, which will give us access to some of the details, such as the option set, whether it's searchable, required, and all that. All of these things we're familiar with from the old Dynamics CRM Solution Explorer. Eventually, more and more of that functionality from the Solution Explorer is going to find its way within PowerApps. So PowerApps is going to be really the place that you do all of your rapid application development environment. You can go ahead and add a new field if you want to, export it into Excel, delete the entity. Over here, we see the different relationships. So one to many, many to one, many to many, and so forth. Business rules, views, again, the views that you've come to know, keys and data. If we look at option sets here as well, these are the option sets, again, that we've come to know within the Dynamics CRM Solution Explorer. The data integration piece, just very quickly, this is where we bring the data between or integrate between finance and operations, which used to be called Dynamics AX, and customer engagement, which used to be known as Dynamics CRM. So we can move data between the two different applications. Well, what we have to do first is create a project, and each project needs to have a connection for each application endpoint. So we set up the different connections first, and then we can move the data back and forth. What we're seeing here in the connections tab is some of the a few of the 160 available connectors available to us. And in this common data service, we've reached out to a few different ones here, like OneDrive and Dynamics 365, to bring in data from a few different sources. If 160 or whatever 200 connectors that are available today aren't enough, you can go ahead and create your own custom connector as well. And finally, the gateways. What this is, it's basically for those situations where you have some data on premise, you can leverage a gateway, create a new gateway to bring some of that legacy data that's on premises up to the cloud and embed it within your PowerApps. So we do have an option for on-premise as well. If we go ahead and look at the applications that have already been built on this common data service, we have a number of them here, and I can go ahead and play this or run it, edit, share it, export it into a solution, and then re-import it if I want to. I'm going to go ahead and edit this, and as I do that, it will open up create.powerapps.com. Now, by the way, you're noticing that I'm doing all of this through a web browser. It's pretty amazing what you can do in terms of application development within a web browser. But there is also an installable version of PowerApps that you can install onto your desktop. So if you want that, it provides a little bit some additional functionality. But you can do a lot just through the web browser, as I'm doing today. So here we are in the PowerApps interface, and this is where we actually create that Canvas-based app as well as the model-driven app. But here we're going to start off with a Canvas-based application, and it kind of looks like a typical, like I said before, kind of a if PowerApps and Excel got together and had a baby, it'd be PowerApps. Sorry, if PowerPoint and Excel got together, it would it would look like at a baby, it would kind of look like a typical Office application. But here in PowerApps, what we can see here is different screens of our application that kind of look like slides from PowerPoint. So you can look at it in terms of the thumbnail view, but you can also look at the slides in terms of what we call the tree view. And what that does is it will break down the different components of the different screens. So right now we're looking at the main screen, and you can see here that all of these are components that we drag and drop onto the screen. This is what I meant by pixel perfect. If you want to have this logo appear right here, or maybe right here, or maybe right there, you can do that. All right, you can do it just by dragging and dropping. You can change the background, the color, the font, whatever you want. And you notice that, like, as I'm selecting some of these components, it's not only selecting it within the main view where you create your application, the visual aspect of your application, but you notice that on the far right, there's this other panel over here that's giving us additional options. So here I've selected a text card input field, and it's giving me some additional functions. And there's 3 tabs here: Properties, Rules, and Advanced. So Properties gives me the option of doing things like, setting the line height, some hint text, the format of it, whether it's even visible or not, the position of it, the size, the padding, the color, border, radius, all that kind of stuff. And then Rules allows me to put some smarts behind it, and I could create some business rules in here. And Advanced would allow me to put a little bit of code behind this, very minimal code, but I can go ahead and put that in there. So on change, on select, do this, and so forth. So oh, okay. So let's go ahead and run this application just to see how it works. And so in order to run it, I just go ahead and hit play. And this application here, so this is an application. It's a task-based application for a person that would work at a outdoor sports store. Now, this is kind of like a co-op. So in order to shop at the store, you have to be a member. And so this application, in this case, it's kind of it's a tablet format, was designed for the store associate. So here we have the store associate. His name is Greg Winston. And it's an application. He's walking around the store carrying around a tablet. And as people walk in, as members walk into the store, if they have some questions, Greg can use this application to better service those members. And it's very task-based. It only does a few different things, but it's enough to really help Greg provide great customer service. So a member comes in and, they start to, maybe they have a few questions or concerns for Greg, and Greg will ask them, what's your member ID? And Greg can go ahead and type in the member ID, and he can either type it in or he can scan their member card, because when you create a PowerApps application, it has the ability, it does provide scanner capability, bar scanner capability. It also provides artificial intelligence capability. So you can just speak or talk or mention the member number, and it can look up the member ID. So I'm just going to go ahead and type in the member ID in this case, and it's going to bring up the record for Jim Glynn. And Jim Glynn is a member of the store. You can see the member ID, his birth date, and I have a number of different options here. And as I select this one here, it'll show me appointments that are scheduled for Jim Glynn, who's the member, the customer of the store. And I can see that he's scheduled for a shoe fitting with my colleague Archie Andrews. He's also set up an appointment for a running workshop. So right off the bat, I can tell that this person is into running, and that gives me some insight. As Greg Winston, that gives me some new insight on this member that I didn't know. If I click on this one here, I can see all the recent interactions for this member. So I can see that they, on the web, they opened up a case. They did an inquiry in person. There was some interaction in terms of a bot on our website. And the reason why this is important is because this gives me some context. This gives me some history of all the different points of interaction with this customer, this member. So this member, Jim Glynn, they don't have to repeat themselves. Like, we've all been in that situation where, we're speaking to a new employee at a customer, and we have to kind of repeat our history or, what we mentioned before on, maybe calling into the call center or writing in. We get all that history right from here. If I click on this icon here, what this does is it shows me the alerts. And here we have two alerts for a digital gift card that Jim is entitled to. We see that he's also entitled to a membership discount. So if he's interested in buying something that day, Greg, as a store associate, can let him know, hey, did you know that you had a discount? Or he may not even know this. Like, Jim may not even know this. And again, without an application that you have in the palm of your hand, it's very hard for Greg to look this up. And so this is the other thing that provides great customer service. And then finally, the 360-degree view of Jim Glynn as the member, as the customer. We can see some basic information, how he spends his, the member spend by category. We can see he's been a member since this date. There's also a little bit of artificial intelligence here that we can embed. We know that, Jim bought a bike from us a few years ago, and he bought. He didn't buy probably the best helmet. He spent a lot of money on the bike, but he didn't spend a lot of money on a good helmet, and he's probably due for a new bicycle helmet. And so we have some artificial intelligence here that's suggesting that it might be time, or Jim might be interested in buying this new helmet, and it's on sale right now, and we can provide that as kind of a suggestion. So here we're not only providing great service for Jim, but we're also helping to upsell on a new product. Okay, so let's exit out of here and figure out how we actually built this. It's really easy to add a new to build out this application, and what we're going to do is just show you how we add a screen here. So I go into new screen. I can select a blank screen, scrollable screen, or a list screen. I'm going to select a list screen here, and it's going to just give me some sample dummy data here, as you can see. For here, what I can do is I can change the title of this screen and say something like members purchase history, right? I can also change the color. So if I want to make this kind of a dark green, of course I can change the font size as well, make it a little bit bigger. Now, what I want to do is bring some intelligence into the screen. So I want to add some data. I'm going to go in here and select a different data source, and looking into one of the 160 connectors available to me, I already set up a couple of connections. I'm going to select customer purchase, the database, and it already knows that, hey, there's an image and there's some components of data, and it was smart enough to put the image here and a few different components of data or text over here. Now, the title of the actual product makes sense as the main title here, but for the subtitle, what it did is it just put on the selected the created on date for that transaction, and that was a good guess. But we want to do something else. Maybe we want to put the purchase date. So we want to put the purchase date on when he actually purchased that jersey or that bicycle and so forth. Now, the other thing we want to do here is we want to be able to navigate back to the member screen. And so what we're going to do here is we can either do it here within within this function here, or we can do it actually in the over here as well. But what we want to do is we want to type in navigate, and we want to type in transition. Oops. Main screen. You can see here, it's giving me a little bit of IntelliSense. Okay. And so we put in just some simple code there just to transition it to the main screen. And now when I go ahead and play the application or run the application, you can see it's live, right? And I can go back and just go back into the main screen if I want to. So that's how easy it is to create a new screen, to put a little bit of intelligence behind it. Again, it's a lot of it just point and click. And the really nice thing too, you'll notice that as we added that data source, it presented the data on the fly, even in edit mode. So you can kind of see how things are coming together as you're building out your application. Okay, let's go back here. Now, if you want to know more, you can go to aka.ms/ toolbox.com/PowerApps/resources. If you go to this link here, you'll find 4 labs that will walk you through the creation of a typical Canvas app. And it's really, really good. It takes about 3 to 5 hours to go through it. Depends on how familiar you are with PowerApps. And I would highly recommend going through these hands-on labs. Cyril?
Thank you very much, Nelson. Do you mind going back to the link and open it? I think it's a good call to action for all the partners that they are here. So the way it's split, it's really good. You know, you have the 101, so really the introduction. You get some labs with some of the guys at ShareWeb. We did the labs yesterday, and in a couple of hours, we're able to build an app managing a catalog, submitting a price request. It's very interesting content. There is a lot of different level. What I love about it is that you get a bunch of examples. So if you are a Dynamics partner or an MSP and you see the opportunity of providing those apps, because there is a bunch of managed services that you can do run, go there, play with it, assign some time to one of you guys that understand your business so you can see, you know, the value and how you can make money out of it. It's very impressive. And what I love about it is really depending the way you do business, it takes some tech skill, let's be honest. In my opinion, you need some guys that they are formula oriented, that they understand the way you have to structure an app or the way you structure a bit of code. But I think it's pretty easy to include a super user in the project that will do a kind of the day-to-day, and you can be the one that provide the blueprint, provide the advanced features. So really a big opportunity for Dynamics partner, because what you're really doing is connecting all those gray area between all those functionality. So really a great tool. If you are an MSP, even if you don't have a Dynamics experience, you could stick to the Canva and building your simple database, or team up with a Dynamics partner if you want to move further. I don't know, Nelson, if you see more about the opportunity that you would like to add before I go to the QA.
For sure, yeah, and since we have just a couple more minutes, let me just kind of also talk about the opportunity for partners. So, like I mentioned before, you know, we have the first-party applications from Microsoft, such as sales, service, marketing, operations, finance, talent, and then you know, if those applications didn't quite fit a customer need, in the past, what we would do is we would build an XRM application or model-driven application. So things like membership relationship management, student relationship management, those are what we called in the past XRM apps or model-driven apps. But then there is that kind of category of user that we started off the presentation with. You know, remember that person who worked at the airport, or those technicians that were doing that check on the airplane, you know, or some other business user that just needs to do a very specific function. That category of user that had a very, very specific task-based function, they needed the application to only do 2 or 3 different things. It had to be very, very simple UI. We never really had a good solution for it. Now we do with PowerApps integrated with a common data service. Common data service plugs into all these additional things like sales, marketing, service, and talent. And so that's where the opportunity, that's definitely one of the opportunities is for you guys, is in between those first-party applications, there's all these little points of interaction, customer interaction, and you can complete the last mile of the business process. So there's really guys, there's really no more excuse for paper and pen. You know, if you're dealing with a customer that's doing inspections and they're still like printing out a form, writing, you know, filling out the form, you can create a Power App for that now. Like there's just no more excuse for paper and pen anymore. You can create a Power App, digitize that data, send it off to the common data service that's already integrated with your customer service application. And maybe one final thing too is application modernization. So there's a lot of different applications out there in the wild from customers that are old. You know, the application might still work, but it's very old. It has a very old interface. Maybe it doesn't support integration web services. It doesn't support. It doesn't have a mobile option. You know, it doesn't have a modern user experience. You know, and customers are just stuck with those applications. And now, you know, using Dynamics 365 and PowerApps and the Common Data Service, you can migrate some of those old applications into a more modern platform. Maybe some of those applications are on Lotus Notes or some other platform, but there's lots of opportunity for you with PowerApps, the Common Data Service, and Dynamics 365.
If I can add on that lesson, I was very surprised. It remember me in the back when I was in school doing Visual Basic, you know, a bit of it, remember that, you know, but way more easier. And also, you know, and so when we were at Microsoft yesterday, some of the guys, they were mobile experts, and they were sharing the pain that is to publish an app, you know, in the Apple Store or the Android Store. And Microsoft was pretty smart, so they get this Power App that is validated. And the workaround they have, it's Power App is an app already in the store, and then after you publish your app. So in an instant, I was able to create my app, publish it, share it with Joel that was with me, and you don't need to go into any validation process whatsoever, being your internal user. I found that pretty cool, and it's saving a lot of time, and you can really move on the way you want. Nelson, we got one question. I was keeping that for the end. So someone asked, is there a known timeline to get a connector for on-premise Dynamics, or is SQL connector going to be the main way to do this? So a connector with the question is, do you have a timeline for a connector with on-premise Dynamics?
I have to look into that actually, Cyril. I thought that the timeline. So if the question is referring to Dynamics 365 on-premise, there's going to be an on-premise update in the second half of 2018. And I believe we will have support for on-premise. There was also something in the question around SQL Server, I think, or did I hear it incorrectly?
SQL connector, yeah.
In terms of a specific SQL connector, I have to look into that as a follow-up. I don't know if there actually is a specific SQL on-premise connector, but through the development of the gateway, there must be a way to take data even from on-premise SQL Server. I don't know if there's a specific connector or if it's something that has to be built, but I can look into that.
Okay, it was some question about pricing, but I think to answer quickly those one, if you are a Dynamics user, you're already getting access to those one. If you are not a Dynamics user but an Office 365 user, you get some of those in the PowerApps resources. There is a link that explains everything. Just like with 3 minutes left, it's kind of a complex discussion. But you could license someone just to go to the Canva, or you can go to the drive-in model. So there is different option. It's very, very accessible compared to what you can see on other platforms.
Yeah, for sure. Like everything that we showed today is actually already included in a Dynamics 365 license and subscription. If you don't have Dynamics 365, then you would get a PowerApps P2 or P1 license. And so that's correct. Yeah.
Okay, great. So really, call to action: go to PowerApps resources, have a look, assign some time to one of your team member, to someone that understands your business. Have a look on it. There is a great opportunity really for partners. If you have any question, don't hesitate, and we'll do our best to help you and connecting you with the right person. So that being said, Nelson, thanks again for joining us for those webinars. Really appreciate, and I wish you all a great day. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone.